Question. First of all, the information gathering is over as far as I'm concerned. One thing I said we would do when I came into office, we would take a look at how we do economic development. We would review that process. It should have been done years ago. Yes, there was some tough points in that, and there were times when I wanted to throw up my hands and say, is this worth it? But we did get a lot of input from the community and from a lot of the organizations that do economic development, that are part of our economic development engine. We did bring in some people to do some seminars. One of those is head of OCRA right now, very well respected. Another one from Bardstown, Kentucky. I wasn't sure how I felt about some of the organizations at that time that were helping us. But what I saw and what we came up with at the end, we did have a strategy and we had a plan. And although that plan wasn't formally adopted, I believe we're doing it anyway because we're all working together much better. Most of the organizations restructured. A lot of them hired new executive directors. And I think we're working very well together. Matter of fact, I want to challenge Jan on, I think we're doing a lot of what she said we're not doing and that we need to do. We always need to move forward. But I don't know if you were able to attend the meeting the other night with Ratio that is doing our comprehensive plan. It was fantastic. We've got all the information. We've given them as much possible information as we can get over the past several years that we put this together. Now, they're in the process of lining that up with our infrastructure so that we can have a comprehensive plan, short and long-term range goals. And I said, we don't want any pie-in-the-sky stuff. We want stuff we can actually do. And then our legislative body, many of our council members are here tonight, need to adopt that. And that's going to allow us to apply for a lot of grants that we can't apply for right now. So I believe it was well worth the discussion we had, and I believe we're the better for it.
Good, thank you, Mayor Welch. Ms. Vetrus, we can certainly all read on your website or in an article in the Madison Courier about what your 3 priorities are going into this election. Put simply, jobs, action, and no waste. Everyone can agree, even politicians, that jobs are a priority for our community. And cutting waste is a necessity of budgeting. But action, now that's where the rubber meets the road. You talk about taking action on ideas that have not yet been advanced. What specific actions will you take that the previous administration has failed to move on that will advance the potential for prosperity in this community?
Thank you. A very good question. I think that when I first put those ideas out there, we had not yet had the recent comprehensive plan, so that was back in January. So yes, some things are finally starting to happen, which is great. And I would move those forward. We have done a lot of work. We have gathered a lot of input. But up until now, we have not been able to move any of those things across the goal. And that's what I want to see happen. One of the things that I'm concerned about is that while there have been some restructuring, some groups are really doing dynamic things now, there are still parts of our community that are being left behind. I'm concerned that we only had 50 people at the ratio discussion. The notice for it went out very late, so hardly anybody knew about it ahead of time. That's not how we get the community on board. I would like to see those plans taken to the local employers in the break room, so that employees during their lunch hour or breaks can make comments and have input into the high schools so that the students can have some input. Let's go where the people are instead of expecting everybody to come down to City Hall for a very hastily called meeting at the last minute. So those are some of the things that would be concrete actions. But yes, I'm very excited about what's starting to happen now.
Thank you, Ms. Vetrus. I think we're going to keep moving on this one. And I guess just to maybe move into that a little bit, I mean, clearly you've had opportunity over the last 4 years to see Mayor Welch in action and perhaps have some criticisms of his administration. Surely that's part of the reason you're running for mayor. You think that perhaps you can do a better job of it. So what do you think are his inherent weaknesses? What would you do differently to accomplish different outcomes in those areas?
Well, I think the mayor is a very nice man, so I want to get that stated right up front. And I'm not running because he's a bad person. I have been working with various mayors over 23 years and was perfectly content to sit where you are and to be an active community member and volunteer. But when I started to see the statistics, the one that scared me the most was actually the one that was pulled together for the Envision Jefferson County study that showed all the counties around us are projected to grow, and we're not. There was a 2012 study done of tourism, and again, comparing ourselves to counties in Indiana, not exactly the most dynamic tourism state, and we still were not as good as counties in our area. That is what got me into thinking about running for mayor. So I don't disagree that we are moving in a good direction, but I don't see any evidence that we're actually going to be able to get there under the current leadership.
You know, I guess I don't hear specific criticisms, and to be honest, I don't. You didn't suggest what you would do specifically differently. I mean, you iterated some of the challenges certainly,
Right.
but you didn't say. How do you approach that differently?
Well, I have a lot of experience actually implementing plans. So, as I said in my opening, it's holding people accountable. It's making sure that we're communicating to the entire population, not just to a few, not just to ourselves, and I know all of us as volunteers tend to talk to the people that we always talk to. So, as I said, going out to the factories, talking to the folks in the break room, getting their ideas. I was working with the students, working at the clearinghouse. We have folks lining up every Tuesday and Friday for food from the House of Hope Food Pantry. We need to engage those folks, not ignore them. They're only a half a block from City Hall. So there are real things that we could be doing to bring the community together.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Vetrus. Mayor Welch, you had opportunity, of course, and I thought this might give you an opportunity, and I'll give you a little extended time here if you wanted to answer the previous as well. But Ms. Vetrus has certainly identified some perceived weaknesses. Specifically, what I heard is maybe you're not getting out and engaging the community enough. But it has been said in the community that there are, in fact, some shortcomings in your administration, or at least the previous term. It has also been said that the definition of insanity is continuing to do something the same way and expecting a different outcome. And we see some forward momentum here at this point. But how will you change directions in the next 4 years to achieve better outcomes for our community?
Good question. First of all, I am not going to criticize Jan because I'm a nice guy. So, I guess I'll get back to this comprehensive plan. I think part of the problem is a lot of times when we see a problem in a certain area, we want to just jump on it real quick and try to put something out there and throw some money at it. That's why we have used the first couple of years, actually around 2 years, to gather information. We continue to do that. If you remember, what we said all along was that the final product of this was going to be a comprehensive plan. A comprehensive plan is going to allow us to do some things that we haven't been able to do. And it's going to show us where our weaknesses are. I think with the team that we have accomplished quite a bit. It takes you about a year. Jan will tell you this. When you start a new job, I don't care where you are, it takes a while to get your feet wet and for your team to know how you are. They know how I think now, and they're not all yes people, but we have done a lot of things that I think are good. I can start listing them, but I'll give you a copy of that later if you want to. I can't, Jan is her own person, obviously, but if I can real quick tell you a little bit about how I approached the mayorship, and I did this 4 years ago. I said up front, I wasn't running against Mayor Armstrong at the time. You may think this is a bunch of baloney, but this is the way I approached it. I had to look at the office of mayor. I haven't been on the council for 4 years, and I had to say, what would make a successful, or give a person an opportunity to be a successful mayor? That's the way I had to look at that. That's the way I processed it. And I had to look back at my experience, my education experience. I do have a business degree, a major in economics. Spent 5 years in the Air Force as an officer. Had some great, I'm always thankful to the military because of the experience I had as a young man to get some leadership and management training. Ran my own business, Jenny and I did, on Main Street for about 9 years. Boy, that's a great experience, let me tell you. But it was a good experience. And I was able to employ a few people for a while. Later on in sales for a while. On the council for 4 years. When I was asked to run for mayor, that's the way I approached it. And that's the way I'm approaching this again. The difference is I've had 4 years. Have I done everything right? Heavens, no. But we do have some things. We're really cooking right now. And that's what this comprehensive plan is all about. And that's where we are going to be moving forward. And maybe you won't ask this, Kevin, but if you ask me why should you vote for me, it's not me, it's the team. You're going to lose this team if you don't vote for me. And a lot of them are here tonight.
Well, on that point, Mayor Welch, I guess
Yes.
we'll just put the shoe on the other foot here for a moment. I mean, Ms. Vetrus has certainly been involved in numerous community activities and events over the last few years, certainly even since she's lived here in Madison. And you've had opportunity to interact and observe her. I understand you're a nice guy and you won't be criticizing her, but what would you say are her shortcomings, or maybe put a different way, in the context of her candidacy for mayor, how are you a better candidate?
Maybe where we disagree, I don't know about being a better candidate. If I knew that question was going to come up, I would have brought my 92-year-old mother tonight, and believe me, she would get, my sister's laughing up there. She would have spent 30 minutes telling you why she's a little bit prejudiced on that. But anyway, Jan, the first opportunity I had to meet Jan was when I was on the council, and she was over the Bicentennial Committee. Did a great job, and I think she remembers. I told her that many times. I worked out of town at that time, so I had to. I didn't get a chance to get to all the meetings, but she did a wonderful job. The one thing I will say that we have a big disagreement over, and maybe she's going to bring that up, was Crystal Beach, keeping that open a little bit longer. And we've tried to do that, but we didn't quite see eye to eye on that situation. We probably had a few disagreements over maybe one of the buildings in town, but Jan has done a great service to our community, and I would never deny that.
Graciousness is not going to get you anywhere.
I think I said some points were this.
We appreciate you greatly. So, Ms. Vetrus, you've heard Mayor Welch's concerns and observations. You know the position of mayor necessarily has need for diplomacy and tact. And there are some in the community that have suggested that your direct and goal-driven approach to tasks may not be ideal for this position. In the face of naysayers, contrarians, and critics, how will you handle the challenges of dealing with those diverse individuals and groups?
That is a good question.
Absolutely.
And I did bring my 92-year-old father and 90-year-old mother.
I know, they're great
They can
people,
probably
too.
tell you that, yes, it is true that I'm used to being the boss and sometimes getting very frustrated. But I think I've spent enough years as a volunteer here in the community, working with a variety of folks on all kinds of projects, including the Bicentennial, that I can adjust my style to work with all kinds of people. I, for example, worked at the concession stand for the high school band parents and took orders quite faithfully from people who were in charge, because all I told them was, please don't make me cook, because that would not be a good thing. So yes, I recognize one changes one's style to fit the situation, but I do think as mayor, you need to present a leadership. You do need to be involved in all aspects of the community. You have to be selling the community, obviously, so sales is important, but also being able to work with executives, with other mayors, with state officials and other local officials is important. And I do want to make one point. Just because there's a change in mayor does not necessarily mean there will be a complete change of the team. I'm about finding the best professional folks in town to do the jobs that need to be done. And I would not automatically just throw out everything that Damon has put together. That's not what leadership is about. It's looking for the best people and bringing the best out in everyone. So that's my approach.
Well, it's like you guys read my script, because our next issue is leadership. So Ms. Vetrus, to continue on the point, I know that you have held management positions in your career with Cummins, and so you're certainly no stranger to making decisions and managing people. But even in those positions, you weren't necessarily the one in charge of policy and direction. What are the most important qualities of a leader, and how will you manifest those qualities as the mayor of Madison?
There are all sorts of ways to lead. One of the ways is by example. So setting an example of hard work, of commitment to excellence, holding myself accountable to the same standard that I would hold anybody else. That's one way you can lead. You can lead by encouragement, making sure that people feel like they are part of the team and that they want to do their very best. Sometimes leadership is making a tough decision and knowing that you're going to get all kinds of abuse and people are going to hate you for a while, and being able to say, I'm sorry, this is why I'm doing it, it's got to be done. That also is leadership. So very, very different styles, and I've had experience doing all of them. I spent 6 months working in Shanghai and traveling around China, where I did not speak the language. I was a foot taller than everybody, and I was able to win over the respect of some factory leaders without even being able to communicate in the language. So I think I've shown that there are different ways to lead and accomplish what you want to accomplish.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Vetrus. Mayor Welch, you are a self-described servant leader in your position as mayor. And while I understand that the position is there to serve the people and their needs, quite frankly, the position demands someone who's going to drive the bus. Leadership is more about being proactive than reactive. How will you manifest the best qualities of leadership if elected to a second term?
Servant leadership is what I have. I think I am suited better for that style. There are all kinds of styles, like Jan said. And by the way, I agree with a lot of what she said there. But my personality, my demeanor fit more of a servant style leadership. And I remember reading a book. I reread it quite a bit. It's a short book, but it talks about servant leadership. Leading people, not being a self-servant, but serving the people. That doesn't mean the inmates run the asylum. That means, and I told all of our department heads from the very beginning, I'm not going to micromanage, but I want to know what's going on. And they've all done that. Every once in a while I have to get on a few of them. But I think they will all tell you that when a decision has to be made, I will do that. No important decision is made without getting my approval, and that's the way it should be. I'm the one that's going to get the blame, and I get a little bit of praise every once in a while for that. But I'm getting back to not pleasing everybody. I learned a long time ago, any decision you make, 30 or 40% of the people are not going to agree with it. The good thing is most of them will go ahead and go with you once the decision's made. There are a few that just want to tear everything down. I understand that. But at the same time, that's just the style that fits me, and I'm gonna go with it. I think it works with who we approach ourselves, the people we put ourselves in line with.
Very good, Mayor Welch. Thank you. So continuing on, Mayor Welch, if you look at the best practices in city management, one of their major goals is to engage and activate the citizenry of a community. What are the qualities of a good citizen, and how will you cultivate and empower the citizens of Madison to promote the vitality of our community?
I'm going to answer that by what actually a councilman said to me the other day, and I'm not going to mention the name, but it was a compliment. Because when he left my office, he said, I just want to say one thing to you. I appreciate your open door policy. And I said that from the very beginning, and I tell you, there are times, and Jan will tell you this in a leadership role, you don't want to talk to anybody. But guess what? It comes with the territory, and sometimes you have to get away. But I don't know that I've turned anybody down that has called me personally and wanted to come in for a meeting. I don't know if any of them are here tonight, but we met with a few citizens the other day about some traffic issues, some speeding issues, and guess what? I didn't like what I heard. And our police chief made it clear to him that I didn't like what I heard, and he knows that. So I feel like that people know I have an open door policy, and I think all of our department heads know that too. The good thing is, because of the style of leadership, the small day-to-day things that they can take care of, thank goodness they go ahead and take care of them. And it leaves me to do some other things, because Jan will tell you too, is in leadership, you've got a lot of different people pulling at you. But it's great to have that.
I'd like to give you maybe just an extra 30 seconds here and go back to, can you quickly define what's your ideal citizen? What's the ideal citizen, or the qualities of that ideal citizen?
Ideal citizen that is one that wants to get involved in the community and doesn't want to, criticism is okay. Constructive criticism is fine. It's the criticism that just constantly tears everybody down. And that's a very small minority. But someone who wants to engage, you're going to have an opportunity with this comprehensive plan. Jan touched on it. Come to these meetings, and they're just getting started. And I've already seen this group. They're going to engage the community. And if you want to be a part of that, you can be a part of that. But that's the kind of citizen that I think you should be. Unfortunately, a lot of people, I guess it's called the silent majority, or it used to be called, they're involved, but from a distance. But you go to some of these meetings, let's talk real quickly. Let's just talk about the substance abuse problem. I know it's going to come up, it already has.
We'll get back to that. Yeah, we absolutely will.
But the community, the reason I brought that up, the community needs to get involved.
Ms. Vetrus, you've certainly been a part of community action organizations and movements in your time. So obviously you know the value of an engaged citizenry. What can the mayor's office do? What can they bring to bear, or that position bring to bear, to encourage engagement from our citizens?
I have given some thought to this because it is important for citizens to get involved. In fact, my parents taught me that if you're going to complain, you better be willing to do something. And so I agree that just complaining and not being willing to actually do something is very frustrating. I think one of the things that I want to do is actually have City Hall available to people when people are not working. So I would like to have sort of office hours, or whatever you call it, in the evenings, Saturday mornings, times when folks that work 9 to 5. I spent 8 years commuting, so I know what it's like when you're on the road all the time, and when you're in Madison, it's shut down. You can't buy anything online, pool passes, golf passes, you can't schedule tea times, you can't do anything if you're on the road during office hours 8 to 4. So that's one of the ways I want to make the community more involved, is actually be accessible to the community. So I'd like to have office hours in the evenings and on Saturdays, and I would like to make sure that we are accessible to folks online as well as just from 8 to 4.
Ms. Vetrus, an excellent answer, and as I alluded to in the introduction, Mayor Welch, maybe that's an idea you can implement should the pendulum swing your way as well. Accessibility counts, for sure. Ms. Vetrus, we're going to move on to social issues, I suppose, but in a broad way. This is about kind of individual character. And it's certainly a broad issue that could take up an entire debate, but at least on the local level, we're going to keep this brief. What is the proper role of religion and faith in the context of a public office? How does a public servant reconcile their own tightly held religious convictions when it might conflict with laws of city, state, or nation?
Well, that's a timely question. Pulled right from the news. I grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And at that time, I'm old, it was 95% Roman Catholic, and I was not. That did not mean that I did not hold to my faith and express my faith, but it did mean that it was very frustrating having things run in the school or in the community as if everybody was Roman Catholic. So I know what it's like to be a minority. And as I mentioned earlier, I was in China, so I know what it's like to be in a minority. So I'm very sensitive to that. I think my faith is very important to me, and I respect people of all faiths. I don't think it is appropriate to bend the laws to fit one particular belief or system of faith, whatever you want to call it. I think that we are a nation of laws, and we were founded on freedom of religion, which doesn't mean freedom to impose your religion on me. It means that we recognize that people are free to worship or not as they choose. So that's my belief.
Thank you, Ms. Vetrus. Mayor Welch, to turn this for you, I mean, obviously you are an active member in your church and have strongly held religious convictions. I certainly hope that the opportunity never comes to have a conflict like that in our community, but how would you reconcile your oath of office that would compel you to uphold the law if it creates an internal struggle over your own beliefs?
Sure. My Christianity is based on not some God that's out there. It's a personal relationship with, I believe, who was the best servant leader ever. And the scripture tells me that if you have a personal relationship with this, if you enter into that covenant, then you are a new creature, which means a change. Does it mean you're perfect? No, but it means a change inside. It means you're never going to make mistakes? No, it doesn't mean that. But when you follow a leader that teaches you to pray for your enemies, and even those that persecute you, I'm not saying I can do that. That's easy to do. But I don't mind carrying that into the workplace. I think they all tell you I don't push any of my Christianity on anybody. The scripture also tells us, as far as it depends on me, I should try to be at peace with everyone. That's the way I try to live it. And I know what you're talking about, the instance down in Kentucky. And Jenny and I have talked a lot about that. I guess I would have to be put in that position before I could really make a final decision, because I believe in the liberties that the Constitution gives us too. But the scripture also teaches me that when I believe God's laws go against man's laws, that I have to make a decision. And that decision may mean resign. I don't know. But if it came to that, there would have to be a decision made, because if I felt it was against what my servant leader taught, I would have to do that.
An excellent and honest answer. I appreciate that very much. I, again, hope that conflict never comes to any of us.
Probably will.
Mayor Welch, as a Republican, you hold, in all likelihood, a conservative view of the spending of tax money outside the basic functions of government. How do you feel about the use of a microloan fund administered by the city to promote business development and growth in downtown Madison? Is that an appropriate use of taxpayer money?
I believe it is, if it's done right. And I know you're going back to some of the well, maybe you're not, but I know that question probably came from that. There was some problem with that a few years ago. These monies were put out there to be incentives. And let's face it, I may not agree with everything the federal and state government has put out as far as incentives they offer, but if we aren't willing to compete, then I think Bill Conyers said it best when he came down and talked to our council. I'll beat you any time if you're going to sit back and not take advantage of these incentives that are out there. We completely overhauled that microloan program. And matter of fact, it's probably almost too hard to get the loan. And I think the council looked at it. We got their opinion on it. We feel like for small businesses here in town, if they're scrutinized beforehand, that it can be a positive thing.
Excellent. Ms. Vetrus, I'll give you the same thing. Do you feel that taxpayer financing of privately held business and property development is an appropriate economic development tool?
I think spending tax money can be an investment in the future, and I agree that it needed to be overhauled. I think everybody recognized that there were serious weaknesses. I think whenever you're spending tax dollars, you have to be accountable, whether that's hiring people, buying cars, or having loan programs. Accountability is still required when you're spending tax dollars. It's what you do when you're spending your own dollars. So I think, yes, loan programs can be very effective, but we have to be accountable.
I agree. Can I go on record as a...
They agree.
Sorry.
Ms. Vetrus,
Did you say sorry?
Well, he's trying to have more.
absolutely nothing to apologize for there. In your interview answering 5 essential questions with the Madison Courier, you were asked about the value of TIF, or tax increment financing zones, in economic development. You kind of skirted the question in a very politician kind of way, but I'd like to dig a little deeper in it with tonight on this issue. In your understanding, how do TIF zones work, and would you be in favor of utilizing that kind of funding as an economic development tool?
I am aware of how TIF zones work, and I think where we have perhaps dropped the ball here locally is we have one giant TIF zone that is only able to benefit sort of an empty area and an industrial area. And I think a more effective way of using TIF zones is to make smaller ones that are more neighborhood area focused, where the money can actually be used for projects that benefit the citizens. The advantage of the TIF zone is that you can pool money so that you have a larger amount of money to be able to do bigger projects. And I'm still learning more about how government funding is very different from corporate funding, and I appreciate that. But in order to be able to do big projects, say making sure that all kids could walk safely to school and have appropriate bike paths and sidewalks. In some communities, they are using their TIF money to actually put in sidewalks so they can keep neighborhood schools healthy. So I think it's more in looking at how we are using it. To constantly just be using it for big industrial projects in vacant land hasn't made any of us feel like it's very good use of our funds. But I think the TIF process itself, when we all understand it better, is actually another one of those tools that we can use. I just think the way we set it up here in Madison or Jefferson County may not be the best way for moving forward. So I'd like to see more people know more about the TIF zone.
So Mayor Welch, to move that into your experience, I understand that the property on Clifty Drive at Michigan Road falls into the Hilltop TIF zone. While that particular tool could be of use there are certainly other economic development tools and enticements available to attract appropriate business entities to this valuable space. What tools are available at the city's disposal, and how have they been used to advance this particular project? Oh, and by the way, what's the status on that property?
If I could, I'd like to go back and just, the TIF zone is one of the, I agree with Jan, it's one of the hardest things it was for me to get my hands around, arms around. Formed back in 1993, and the big part of land she's talking about is the 63, 64 acres that are what are known as the industrial park that was purchased, I think, back in Mayor Huntington's administration. But the TIF zone, the legislature put that in, and I'm glad they did, because it's given an opportunity for smaller communities to have a lump sum of economic development money. And the zones were normally put around our major manufacturers and industries to start with in the tax base. And incrementally, some of that money goes into a fund, and it comes back to our community. The good thing is, right now, we have about $1 million a year coming into that fund. And I have a couple, I asked Bob Cook to kind of look back and see what all redevelopment commission has used this TIF money. By the way, the redevelopment commission oversees this TIF fund. And I've got 2 pages of going back 20 years, millions of dollars, anything from Wilson Avenue improvements, fuel tank replacement, Craigmont Street extension, and on and on and on. It's being used for the Julie Berry Hutchison Lane project. By the way, we should be getting started on the other part of that very soon. I think there's been a settlement on that. Would you go over the last part of that question?
Well, I wondered what other economic development tools or enticements might be utilized specifically for the property there on Michigan Road, but, and then what's the status?
Well, one is tax abatements. I know a lot of people don't like tax abatements, but here again, I think a lot of times they're misunderstood. We have to compete. Every other community uses these. And by the way, for those that think other communities aren't trying to get our great businesses here, I've talked to many of them that have been offered some pretty good deals. Now, they love Madison, but if the right deal comes along, don't think we're going to always keep what we have. There's a revolving loan fund that the city well, actually, I think that was never changed. I think the JCIDC kind of still runs that situation. But here again, it's a very tough process to get through. So those are some of the things that, the way I look at this, Kevin, is a partnership. I think when government can partner with local business, then it's a win-win situation. If it's tied to jobs on the other end, which is what we have tried to do. You're talking about the super ATV situation. Did you want to?
No, not that specifically, but and I see your time's up. But just to get back to the Michigan Road, Cliffy Drive, the shopping center. Where are we at on that?
Well, we can. I think
give you 30 seconds.
I think the original announcement on that was back in April, and believe me, the person that was, or the company trying to buy that building from Siemens. Some of you might remember it as was it Rexnord or Reliance? I can't remember which building it was, but it's been sitting there empty and, just deteriorating. And at some point, I guarantee you the city was going to have to get involved in that down the road. Had environmental issues. We have a homegrown company here that's willing to invest into that. That's what this redevelopment money is all about, as far as I'm concerned. And here's the process it's going through now. We have to change the TIF plan. It has to be specific on this. That has to go before the planning commission, which is scheduled to do in about a week. Then it comes before the city council, and if it gets through both those bodies, it'll come back to the redevelopment commission for approval. We don't know any of that's going to be the final, or if it gets through that process, the final decision will be made by the redevelopment commission.
I think we're talking about different properties, and that's fine. I appreciate that there was advance.
I'm sorry.
I was referring more to the shopping center that had been destroyed. And
I apologize.
That's okay.
That's a little bit further south than the one
that's
I
okay.
was talking about. They've both been in the newspaper.
So,
Want me to talk a little bit about that?
well, I actually do. I kind of want to know where that shopping center is. I don't want to give you too much time, but and Ms. Vetrus, if you'd like to comment on it when he's done, I'll give you some equal
Here
time.
again, that's
But
been.
just the shopping center.
Sure.
Is there a buyer, and is there something moving forward on that?
Oh, there's investors that own that, and it was sitting there, as you well know, deteriorating. I don't know how all this works, but everybody, there are investment groups out there that purchase things that they don't even know they own sometimes. And I think the Siemens building was something like that. But we started a dialogue with these people and said, we're getting kind of tired of this being this way. Let's try to partner and get this thing down. They kind of got excited about that. I think that ended up being about $1 million project to tear down. The redevelopment commission threw in I can't remember exactly, a little over $200,000 into that, approved that, to help get that process started. They had some huge environmental problems. I haven't spoken to them recently, but I do know that they are working on a master plan for all of that property as we speak. There's also acreage behind that, where that building was. It's all wooded, but I think there's about 8 or 10 acres back there They're looking at a total master plan. And by the way, the ratio people are making contact with them because any of these things that we already have going, we want them to know about it while they're putting together this comprehensive plan.
Very good. Ms. Vetrus, would you like to comment on those projects as well?
No, I don't have the insight that the mayor does, but I do want to take credit for it getting torn down because as the mayor alluded to earlier with there's a building downtown on West Street that's been an eyesore for, 8 years now. And we had a lot of back and forth about tearing it down. And I said one day at City Hall, well, if you're going to start talking about gateway buildings into Madison, how about looking at the Plaza Shopping Center at the top of Michigan Road that has been sitting there idle and empty for at least 20 years. Let's start there first. So he did. And I'm very glad that we got that one torn down.
Ms. Vetrus, thank you for fixing that problem.
He's not going to.
Okay. I will go ahead and move on. And Mayor Welch, we're back to you then. Certainly another goal of economic development best practices is that of placemaking, quality of life issues. How important are arts, theater, and music in the economic development picture, and what have you done to develop them?
Well, we've got a lot of very talented people in our community, as you well know. And, they've formed an arts alliance recently and have been recognized in the state of Indiana for that. And let me tell you, that's put us on the map that way. Not only are we one of the largest contiguous national landmark districts in the United States, but now we're on this very esteemed list of being Bill Barnes will kill me for not knowing exactly what that title is, but we have been recognized for the art that we have. And they've come out of the woodwork on this alliance, and they're meeting and they're talking. I think they had a show over the weekend, a hometown show. There's plays going on all the time. I tell you, it's hard to keep up with on the weekends and even during the week. 2 or 3 things going on, but that's what it's all about. It's very important to our community, especially with the millennial group. We're positioned. Madison is positioned perfect for what's going on in our culture right now, and I can expound, but if you want to go on, that's fine.
That's fine. Ms. Vetrus, how important are the arts and theater and music and economic development to you? What would you do to promote them?
Well, as you know, I've been part of the art scene since I moved here. In fact, started a fund at the Community Foundation in the very first year of the foundation to support the arts. And I'm very pleased that we were at the grants dinner last night, and
Community.
there are arts organizations benefiting now 20 plus years from that fund. So I'm very committed. The Arts Alliance that Mr. Welch was talking about is definitely something that I've been involved with from the beginning. We started the Feed the Arts program with the help of the Community Foundation and many artists, and that's now led to the Arts Alliance. It's the cultural district that we've now been awarded, which is very good. And back in the day when I was doing economic development under Al Huntington's administration for a couple of years, one of the things that Betsy von der Heide and I worked on very actively was getting Madison to be the stage for movies. We went to the Film Locators Convention, trying to attract filmmaking here. I noticed Cincinnati just was awarded 2 films. So we now have one of the things that they told us back in the 90s was a problem, is we now have companies doing filmmaking very close by. So all the things like cranes and cameras and processing and all that support stuff that goes with movies is now very close with the work that's being done in Louisville. We're positioned beautifully. We're a set. They also told us we need more writers. So if we get our writers writing scripts that can become television series or movies, we have a great opportunity for a whole new bunch of economic development. Indie films don't require much, so
You've both stated, that certainly the importance of arts in our community, but I don't think either of you expounded greatly on what the mayor's office specifically can do. So, Mayor Welch, do you have some notion?
I think our role is, as I think for all government entities, is a partner. And I've had many meetings. Believe me, they're not afraid to come and talk. And we've talked a lot to Bill Barnes and Kim Nyberg. They keep me posted on what's going on. And I've tried my best to support them. There's an initiative going on down on Walnut Street that I think is going to help that area. And working with Connie and Dick Jones on that. So we've got a lot going on. I think from our standpoint is we need to be open to how we can help. Sometimes it's just a pat on the back and saying, hey, we'll support you where we can. Sometimes there's ways that maybe financially we can help them out if we see that it's really something that's going to help out our economy. That's the whole thing. And really quick on what Jan was saying, we're positioned perfectly because the millennials, you know what they're saying right now as far as the number one reason we live in a community is a quality of place. It's passed up jobs. You know why? Because jobs are so regional anymore. People are willing to drive an hour. I did it for 4 years to work. And even, I know people here that have to take off on a plane on Monday, but they choose to live here in Madison. We're positioned, if you can't get what you want here in Madison, we're right in the middle of 3 major metropolitan areas. So guys, we've got a lot to be thankful for, and we're going to do that.
And Ms. Vetrus, how do you think the mayor's office can enhance the arts aspect of our community better?
Well, I think a real simple thing that's already been done, and that's having local artists hang their work in City Hall, which is certainly great, makes a visible commitment to the artists. I think it's part of that vision, making sure that decisions are made that include the arts community. I would like to see artists on more of our boards. Our Parks Department currently doesn't have people from the arts involved in programming, which I think is a real simple thing to do. There have been past Parks Board members who have wanted to include the arts. It's just a matter of allocating the resources and making sure who you appoint to boards is committed to that same vision for the arts. So one of the simplest things I would do is make sure that I appointed artists and creative and artistic types to boards and committees in the city. It's a simple thing to do. It will change the perspective because they bring a different way of looking at problems and solving them. So.
They do look at the world differently, that's a fact.
Notice I didn't say all committees would be all artists.
Ms. Vetrus, thank you. So clearly the job of economic development is broader than what the mayor's office alone. Both of you have spoken on Ground Roots Efforts, Community Foundation, other organizations. Identifying partners with clear vested interest and collaborating effectively is also a basic tenet of best practices in city management. How would you reach out to organizations like the Chamber of Commerce or Industrial Development Corporation or Madison Main Street to advance this cause? What about other partners? And this one's to Ms. Vetrus.
Oh, okay. Well, I think that we already have a good collaborative relationship going with the Chamber and Main Street and JCIDC. I think that's important. I would like to continue fostering that idea of cooperation. I think we are going to need to broaden that to include the county. I worry that we really don't have a place on the hilltop where people gather. I'm hoping that this new development at the corner of Clifty and Michigan becomes something. Just for my own campaign, trying to find a place on the hilltop which is a natural gathering place other than a couple restaurants. There isn't a place like we have downtown where people tend to gather in groups. So I think looking at how we can improve the connectivity of Clifty Drive is going to be important, whether that's through the chamber or through some planning and zoning or through some active living work that we're doing, I'm not sure. But all of that can come together. I don't know if there are any. I mean, the chamber covers the hilltop as well, so making sure that the hilltop is more active is part of it. I would keep pushing them to do that.
Mayor Welch, as I've spoken to people around the community and did some interviewing in preparation for this debate, I heard some criticism that perhaps your office had not reached out as proactively as it could have to the chamber, not utilizing the resources that they have. JCIDC, of course, is in a little bit of a, well, the situation is precarious at the moment, I suppose. And so what can you do to reach out more proactively to those organizations? And
Not reaching out to the chamber? Did you say that, Trevor?
I didn't. That wasn't my question.
I'm sorry, that particular situation, obviously I don't get in every business on Main Street, but I'm surprised that you got that. I'm not sure where that came from, but my goodness, we talk on a regular basis. I think that's the one thing that's happened when we took that year and a half and looked at economic development. I think we're all working together very well. Are we covering everything? No, and I disagree with on JCIDC. We've got a very good group going right now. And, you know, I can't determine what's going on otherwise, but we feel very good about what, you know, they're tied into this cub manufacturing and workforce development. So I disagree on that part, whoever said that, but at the same time, you know, I've got some weaknesses. Sometimes you have to be careful. You have so many things coming at you. You still have to get out every once in a while. And, we try to do that. There was a ribbon cutting the other day. So we try to get out. I'll tell you, I probably don't get it all. But can I say one thing about the arts? You know, it was, okay. They've asked me the last 3 years to pick out a picture down on Main Street there, which I'm going, hey, I'm going to do that. I'm sure most of you would not agree with what I pick out. But, I'm more of a real estate type guy, or scenes like that. But I real quick, I told them. Someone might have said, how do they pick you to do that? And I said, well, when I was a senior in high school, I took an art appreciation class, and my teacher was Lou Noble. Everybody knows Lou Noble. But the rest of the cross-country team was in there too, and we all got A's.
Lou's certainly a very generous teacher. So Mayor Welch, we're going to continue with you here for a moment. It's my understanding that in the next couple of years, the city will be taking over the maintenance, upkeep, and logistics of traffic on Highway 56, Main Street. From Jefferson Street to the west end of town, and of course commercial traffic will be diverted off of this thoroughfare all the way to the top of Hanover Hill. Given that plans need to be started well in advance of implementation, it would seem that we need to make some decisions right away. Does your administration have plans on the table for traffic flow and parking in downtown Madison?
They're probably not perfect, but yes, we've looked at all that. Believe me, there was a lot that went into that. You're tying this into the bridge approach. This is all part of the bridge approach project that we've been working on for about 2 years. And something people don't understand, there's some things that have been happening recently that we've been working on for 2 or 3 years. Jan mentioned a while ago, when you own a business, sometimes you can just get up and you make a decision, you just do it. It doesn't work that way all the time with government. But we moved forward. We got some help from the governor, and this project can be as much as $14 million, which is going to give us some part of a straight-in approach to Main Street, which if you talk to the industry leaders, they thought this was something that's going to be fantastic for our community. I think so too. We've been looking at that for years. So anyway, part of that deal, and the NDOT is doing this all over the state, by the way, to all the communities. They're wanting the communities to take over the streets that go across the cities, and they just want to take care of the streets that go around. And anytime they're working on a deal with a community, this comes up on the table. Guess what? They wanted us to take over Hanging Rock Hill too, just to let you know. And we've got some problems there, and they're dealing with those a little bit. And that was part of the deal we would not agree to. But we did agree, because we thought it made sense to take over 56, otherwise known as Main Street, which, by the way, a lot of people don't realize that's a state highway. But from Jefferson Street to the top of Hanover Hill, that's part of the agreement, which probably is not gonna happen until 2020, by the time they get this completely done. That's some initial readings. It's, some of you that live in that area on Bridge Approach have probably already gotten letters. But we thought it made sense to take Main Street, because we've been talking about that for years. Man, if we had Main Street, we could do a lot of things. Would it cost some money? Yes, but guess what? If we own that, we're eligible for some grants, federal and state grants, to do some things on there that if the state owns it, we're not. The other thing is, we've already started a maintenance fund for that. Money's going into that every year. So we feel like, based on putting some money aside, budgeting that money, and the grants we'll be eligible for, that when that comes, we'll take that over 90 days after the project is finished, which, like I said, will probably be somewhere around into 2019, into 2020, based on what they're talking about right now. So,
yeah, and as you're well aware, they take a long time those projects take a long time to evolve from the idea to the implementation.
and the public will be involved in that, by the way.
Very good. Ms. Vetrus, I know that you have great concern for the preservation and utilization of our historic downtown area. And given the volume of traffic during festivals, along with the need for as much useful parking space as possible, have you given any thought to traffic flow and parking plans for Madison's Main Street?
Actually, I've given a lot of thought to it, and I did get one of the letters, so I'm directly involved. And I'm hoping that there is a lot of public input and that we pick the best bridge approach design, not just the cheapest one. But
More about Main Street
yeah,
than...
Main Street, I think it's very important. I am glad that the city has started to set aside funds. I wish it was a little more obvious in the budget. I think we've got things all different places, but there are funds being set aside now so that by the time 2020 or whenever it is comes along, that we actually have some money built up and the interest will be able to pay for maintaining the highway. One of the things I am concerned about is I've gotten a lot of questions about golf carts. And right now they are banned on Main Street because it is a state highway. So I hope that we start to look now at how we combine pedestrians, wheelchairs, bicycles, kids on skateboards, motorcycles, golf carts, and automobiles, as well as trucks, whether they're just delivery trucks or major freight trucks. Figuring out how all of these folks are going to share space safely and who's going to park where has got to be part of that design. And I don't believe when we did some of the early discussions about what Main Street could look like that we were including golf carts at all. So that definitely needs to be added to the mix. I do remember my experience in China again, looking out my apartment window to one of the busy streets in Shanghai and seeing all of these different modes of transportation in mass. I hope we can do a good job of managing it here in Madison, but making sure we're pedestrian friendly and that we have safe streets is very important.
So, Ms. Vetrus, to continue on with you, and you all jumped the gun a little bit, and I'm going to have to talk to you about this next time before, but we're all very happy to have a safe and reliable bridge serving our area. But I know that you, in fact, live directly in the current traffic flow approaching the bridge. What recommendations would you have for designing the approaches and shifting the traffic flow from its current tortuous path?
Well, I also took truck driving when I worked at Cummins, so I know how miserable it is for trucks to have to make those right-hand turns. It's absolutely horrible. And even though the engineers, when we were first talking about a new bridge, assured me there would be no increase in truck traffic, there has been a huge increase in truck traffic, and there are some majorly bigger trucks now going around the corner. So I don't know what the exact approach should be. I think we need to see some really good designs. There are some ideas about, similar to what they did at Markland Dam, where through traffic goes across the bridge, And traffic that's going on to Beebe maybe goes underneath the bridge approach. Might be one way to do it. But I think the main thing that I hope the traffic engineers and the designers look at, and I'm going to keep pushing, is how do we make sure that when the big trucks come off the bridge, that they respect our pedestrian friendly downtown. And that is not happening. I mean, nobody respects pedestrians downtown, not just trucks. So I don't want to slam truck drivers in particular, but there's a crosswalk right now across at Main Street, across Main Street at Baltimore, and nobody stops for pedestrians in the crosswalk. So how that's going to work with big trucks has got to be addressed now. It's very important.
Mayor Welch, of course, you know, the bridge project was planned and started by the time you took office, but you did have the wonderful opportunity to preside over the grand opening of this spectacular feat of engineering. I understand that you've also taken an active role in negotiating the approach on the Madison side, and I'm eager to learn what the plan is and how it's going to impact the neighborhood and structures in the vicinity as the traffic flow changes.
Okay, sure. And I want to give Mayor Armstrong credit. We talked a little bit about this 4 years ago when we were talking here.
I think we all took some credit for it that
Yeah, we
night.
all took, you did, you took credit for it that night too, I think. But the problem was, I think maybe he was told one thing by some, maybe even federal officials, and I know a month or two before I took office, he called me in and said, well, that's gone away. So we thought, not too long after we came into office, we got together with some industry leaders and said, we've got to push for this, so we kept moving it forward. And believe me, it wasn't an easy process, but they felt like that it was a perfect time to do it with a brand new bridge, okay? Getting back to traffic, the one good thing about taking over Main Street is we can reroute the pass-through semi-traffic. And we will, that's one of the big things, which we don't know how much, believe me, we all love the truckers, and they are a big part of our economic development, but it's wear and tear on Main Street, as you all know, and it'll be much safer for everyone for them to route around and come down 421. The other thing I want you to understand is this, what Jan was talking about, I think back in 2008, NDOT came up with about 5 conceptual drawings of some, they weren't nothing official, just computer drawings. 4 of the 5 were straight-in approaches, but they all were a little bit different. The only thing I might say is, I think 2nd Street should, you know, I'm going to push for 2nd Street to stay so we can pass through it. That's what I would push for. That would be one thing. But this is not just a bridge approach. It's called the gateway approach for a reason. That area of our town is a little bit what we might consider blighted.
Careful.
There's some people that have cleaned some of that up, I'm not saying. But this is going to give us an opportunity. No, I didn't mean you're. But I don't think there's any question about that for different reasons. But this is going to give us an opportunity because they're going to have to buy right away on both sides. That we can, and this is all part of the plan, the comprehensive plan that we're looking at. All this stuff is being plugged in. And we can do some really great things. This is not just a gateway to Madison. I think the state going in, this is a gateway to Indiana. So.
Yeah, and you know, and I'd like to give you another 30 seconds here. Me and my neighbors, including Jan, all did receive this letter, and we've seen the individuals working out there and painting lines on our yards and sidewalks, and there's been quite a bit of concern. What are they doing? Are they widening First Street? Are they planning on taking our yards away? You know, there's a lot of concern down there that maybe it will impact, in fact, an historical neighborhood, Scotts Garden, in that area. And so,
sure, I think right now, Kevin, all they're doing, we've had one meeting with them to kind of give us an intro on what's going on. Here again, after we signed a contract over a year ago, they still had some work to do. They do have a company that's scheduled to do the work. They've already started on the environmental study, which takes several months. I think what they're doing now is looking at right away. They're looking at trying to locate utilities and things of that nature. So I know anytime people see that, but I think that's the reason they sent out a letter. There will be an opportunity for public input on the different routes, even though NDOT is doing this whole project from beginning to end, and that's good for two reasons. They're footing the bill, and they're also, it also allowed to go a little bit faster. So a lot of this has been preliminary work over the last year, and now they're getting down to business.
In the interest of fairness, Ms. Vetrus, would you like to comment any further on that?
Just, I want to make sure that it's not, that they don't pick a choice and then have the open meeting to let us all see what they've already chosen, which NDOT sometimes likes to do. And I also want to make sure that we aren't just worrying about truck traffic on Main Street, because the trucks are going to come off the bridge as they do now and then have to go up Jefferson. So there is quite a bit of pedestrian unfriendly place that's going to have to be addressed, even though it's still going to be highway.
Thank you, Ms. Vetrus. Mayor Welch, certainly being the current mayor and a conscientious citizen of our community, you must be horrified by the scary increase in drug-related crime in Madison. Is the team you have in place in law enforcement up to the job of controlling this ugly situation? What, if any, changes will you make to the leadership of the police department in the next term? What can be done to simply increase the presence and visibility of the police department in problem areas?
We're specifically talking about substance abuse, and I think one reason why you're seeing a lot of that in the newspaper is that our guys aren't doing a good job of getting him off the street. And one thing we've got to understand, this is not just a law enforcement situation. I think they're basically doing a pretty good job of getting some of these people off the streets. Their frustration is they're back out on the streets in 2 or 3 days, or someone just takes their place, or a new type of drug comes out. We've got a lot of great organizations in our community. And by the way, this is a national problem. This is the communities all around us. I think one of the reasons why we see it more in our area is the media covers it very well, and we have a lot of activity. We arrest a lot of people. You notice a lot of times just on traffic stops, these guys are making busts, doing a good job. Can we improve? Absolutely. But law enforcement's not the only situation here. We've got to all pull together. The judicial branch, we need to have a conversation, and I don't think we're all talking on that. We need to start doing that. Recently, I know Councilman Berry, who was here tonight, he invited Jimmy Sedam. I don't think he would mind me mentioning his name. He was an addict, and I guess he would still consider himself one, but he's been clean for 3.5 years. When we had a family who lost a young man to suicide because of drug addiction, it is a major problem. It's ruining our young people, and we need to have a conversation. And each one of you have to be part of that. It's more than law enforcement. Most of the money that I've seen has been thrown at the rehab end, which is great, because I know they say once you get addicted, it's tough coming off of it, and we need to have all that. But we've got to get on the other end, and I'm not saying I have all the answers, but we've got to get at the kitchen tables of some of these kids that are living in terrible situations. And I don't know how we do it, but we need to start having a conversation. And Dan talked earlier about involving the community. You better get involved. If you think the police are going to solve all this, it's not going to happen. But can we improve? Absolutely. But it has to be a community.
Ms. Vetrus, how do you see the role of the mayor's office in the curbing of drug-related crime? Would you keep the same chief of police on the job if elected? And how would you, or what would you do on day one in office to change this situation?
On day one, solve the drug problem. Probably not.
Good question, isn't it, Dan?
One of the things I have actually been, and the community is involved through the clearinghouse, I've been part of what is called the COCO group of, and now I forget the exact words for it, but there have been concerned citizens talking about this for years. And as a board member at LifeSpring, I was able to influence our group to get a forensic specialist in the jail so we could start doing assessments of people when they come in. So we know if they have mental health issues, if they have addiction issues. And I think that's important. But as Damon said, it's not just a policing thing. There are models for having folks into treatment as opposed to into jail, because right now that's the only place you can go to detox, which is not a good solution. It's very expensive to do it that way, and it's not safe. And we have lost 5 young people in a 2-month period, and we continue to have people die from drug overdose or suicide because they're so depressed when they are no longer addicted. So it's a very big problem in our community. The police are part of the solution, and it is my understanding from talking to lots of folks in the state police and in the sheriff's department and others, families that are involved, that we can do more, that our local police need to be more engaged in the neighborhoods. They need to get out of their cars, walk the streets, bike the streets, know the kids, be role models, not just sit in a car and wait for somebody with a broken taillight and then bring the dogs instead. So that's what I would change.
Mayor Welch?
I did bring a few notes in our police department just to show that we have done a few things. We increased the size of the department from 27 to 29 officers, increased the size of the detective division, and I want to thank the council members that are here. It was an increase in the budget that way. The main focus of that added detective is to work narcotic cases. I think that's the reason you're seeing more arrests. We started the school resource officer program with MCHS, and we're partnering with them on that. 7 MPD officers are on the 10-man ERT team. Increased drug arrests and convictions. The bike patrol, by the way, has come back out. We've added 2 more officers to our training division. Again, a formal field training officer to train new officers on the department. A few months ago, real quick, that I asked Chief Thurston and Assistant Chief Perkins to put together a committee of the rank and file. And we've been meeting for 4 or 5 months now. You're not going to solve all these problems, but we are beginning to. I'm getting input from all of the representatives from the police officers to how do we increase our presence in the community. And some of this, believe it or not, is a public relations issue. And we're going to see some improvements in that over the next 4 years.
Ms. Vetrus, I'll give you an extra minute if you want to comment on it.
Well, I think that it is important to have the police more involved in the community. We had neighborhood watch groups set up, and frankly, the city police are not involved in any of that. I didn't see any bicycle police all through Chautauqua weekend. I did see 2 bicycles, old court days back in May, and that's the last I've seen of any bicycles downtown, and I walk quite a bit downtown. So I really think that getting the police out of the cars and into the neighborhoods, getting to know individual people. I was appalled when we had a problem with homeless folks, and it was the manager at the Dollar General store who knew the problem before the local police did, and I think that's a problem. I think they definitely need to be more involved right now. It doesn't take a study.
Thank you, Ms. Vetrus. I have 2 more questions to ask, and we're going to go straight out of drug-related crime into something I hope maybe is a little more fun, so we'll see. But Ms. Vetrus, go forward with me a little bit. It's now January 2016, and unfortunately, your spirited campaign for mayor was unsuccessful. But Mayor Welch has grown to admire your intelligence and in fact sees the wisdom in many of your ideas. he has decided in his beneficence to hire you as an advisor to his administration. What is the best piece of advice you can offer him?
Oh my goodness. Well, I've been giving him advice for as long as I've lived here in the community. He hasn't had to pay me at all. So. I think the advice I just gave is probably the most important. The other advice I would give right off is make sure that the conversations, whether it's the comprehensive master plan or Envision or the Gateway project or the redevelopment of the shopping mall or whatever it is, that we actually engage all parts of the community. Make a concerted effort to get young people talked to. Make a concerted effort to get poor people talked to. People with disabilities ought to be involved in decisions about traffic, about infrastructure. It's not enough to say we're having a public meeting, oh, nobody showed up. Well, you had your chance. We have to be intentional about reaching out to people who aren't comfortable coming to public meetings. And that would be the best advice I could give. And you can take it.
Mayor Welch?
I'll receive that, but I'll say we're doing a lot of that. And I've always said that it doesn't matter who gets the credit as long as it gets done. So.
Mayor Welch, it's now January 2016, and although the race was a real nail-biter to the very end, your votes came up short.
Okay.
And you are now handing the gavel over to Mayor Vetrus. She has come to greatly appreciate your integrity and your experience and wishes you to stay on to help her navigate the perilous road ahead. What is the best advice you could offer?
She wished for me to stay on. Let me start by saying this. We went to a ribbon cutting. When was that, Lindsay? The other day. Anyway, I'm not supposed to engage in it. And one of the comments I made was, after I gave a little spiel, I said, look, I like to know where all the employers are here because I might need a job in January. So, well, listen, here's what I would do. By the way, Jan is not afraid to give advice, okay? So I'm not sure that would change at all in that situation. But on the other hand, here's the way what I would say to Jan. Of course, we would start meeting, as soon as possible, and I would let her in on what we had going. And by the way, I'm so excited about a lot of things that are going on. I know you think I'm blowing smoke, but there are just some exciting things going on, which I would pass on to her. And I would encourage her to, she may have a different style or leadership style, but some of these things are going to be so important to move forward, including the comprehensive plan, which is engulfing much of the stuff we're talking about tonight. So as Tim did with me, we had several meetings before, and anything I would, she's her own person, obviously, and she would go the direction she wanted to go in. But I wouldn't be afraid to say, Jan, I think this is really important for you to move forward with.
All right, then. Mayor Welch, this is your opportunity to dream just a little. Let's say that money is not an issue. Not an issue at all. And for some strange alignment of the stars kind of moment, the city council will go along with you on any one thing. What's the one new idea or one new project you would really like to implement for this community?
One new idea, zip lines. I kind of anticipated this question, that is, but I'm probably not going to answer your question, but let's be reasonable on this. I get new ideas. We talk about young people moving in. We've got a lot of young people moving back into Madison, many that grew up here. I've got 2 or 3 on my staff, and believe me, between them and Whitney and Trevor and all these people, they give me a lot of new ideas. I think maybe the new idea is to be able to listen to these ideas and be able to say, you know what, that probably would work here in our community. But if I had a potload of money, let's get back to infrastructure. Replace all the sidewalks, pave all the streets, replace all the sewer lines. That's infrastructure, that's one thing, okay? It all falls under. So anyway, we've got a very historic community, but we've also got a very historic infrastructure in a lot of ways within the streets. So that's probably not your answer that you want.
No, that's fine. I heard another gentleman in this very room not so long ago.
Yeah, I know who it is too.
Say, the greatest thing about Madison is it's full of old buildings, and the worst thing about Madison is it's full of old buildings. So that may be the case. Ms. Vetrus, a similar alignment of the stars has taken place, and you are in fact the mayor now with all the cards. What is your one big idea that would take the city of Madison to the next level?
Well, I agree that it would be wonderful to wave a magic wand and fix all the aging infrastructure. But as far as new ideas, I would love to see our riverfront developed for active living. I didn't realize that kayaking is such a big deal now. We don't have any kayaks, and yet we make kayaks right here in Madison at the Monroe place. So I would like to see, as Mayor talked about earlier, Crystal Beach could be an active place where we rent kayaks, we have canoes, whatever things people can come up with to really turn our riverfront into a part of the community, so that it's an asset, not just there. We walk along it, but there's more than walking. So that would be my new idea.
Very good. Ms. Vetrus, Mayor Welch, I appreciate both of you. That's all the questions I have for you this evening. I appreciate your candor, and I hope this was as enjoyable for you all as it was for me. I really appreciate all the citizens showing up here, and I would like to encourage each of you. I think absentee balloting starts now?
Yeah.
Tuesday.
It's
I was gonna mention
in
that.
person.
Absentee balloting starts Tuesday. Of course, the first Tuesday of November is Election Day, and like they like to say in Chicago, vote early, vote often. So thank you all for coming very much. Thank you, Mayor Welch. Thank you, Ms. Vetrus. I'd like to hand it back over to the photograph.